Hi, good morning. My name is Gurpreet Brar, and I am the new farm advisor on board with UC Cooperative Extension. I started in January 2013, so a little more than a year. I'll distribute these slides.
Okay, we can do that.
So today, my topic is irrigation management in a drought year. And since this is a very sensitive topic to talk about this year, I think these are very smart people. They pushed a new guy to talk about this. So anyways, I'm assistant. So before I start on the irrigation strategies, I want to talk about the upcoming symposium that I'm going to organize this year too. The last year, 2013, was my first Southern San Joaquin Valley Almond Symposium as in Kerman. This year too, I'm organizing a similar symposium in Kerman Community Center on May 29. I have put a sign-up sheet here so that you can put your name and email on there to sign up for my newsletter from the Shell. And I will be sending out the symposium agenda and all the flyers and all the information related to the symposium very soon. I tried to be as inclusive as I could in terms of topic selection. Topics will range from fertilization, training, pruning, irrigation, to pests and disease management, and also laws and regulations. And please register early so that I can have a head count for lunch. And also make sure you bring all others along. I want your presence because the topic selection for this year is based on most of your comments from the previous year's attendee feedback. So I need your feedback for the next year on which topics to select. So now, coming on to the drought, irrigation management strategies in a drought year. So when we think of drought as human beings, the first reaction is we try to panic. What will our trees do? How will our trees do? And how can we manage the water, the limited water that we have? There are a lot of things that are out of our control, rainfall, snowpacks, and such things, but there are some other things that we can control: timing of irrigation, the amount of irrigation, or the strategies that we employ to utilize that limited water. Fortunately, we have precision irrigation technologies these days that we didn't have 50 years ago. To have a little bit of consolation, I was reading a chart, a graph last night, which plotted from historically known information and the scientists that drew from the woods in the forest. And that graph showed that about 1,200 years ago, around 800 CE, and then about 1100 or 1200 CE, there were two droughts in California which lasted 200 years. Unfortunately, 20th century, according to that graph, was the wettest century ever. But the flip side is we are more dependent on water for our needs and for our industry more than ever. So I would like to discuss about the irrigation strategies that we could employ, utilize that limited amount of water that we have in so many ways. And then we also need to know how much water to apply, and then when to start irrigation if we have limited water. So I would like to show you this little graph on the ED-based irrigation scheduling that I would talk about later. But first, I will start with the yield being a function of the water applied. Based on so many years of research by our almond and walnuts extension specialist at UC Davis, Dr. Bruce Lampinen, he developed a light bar which you can run through your orchard and get the data on PAR, canopy light interception. So that gives you an idea about how much light your tree canopies is intercepting. So if you are getting just 20% light down below on the ground, that means you have 80% light, canopy light interception. So that from years of data that Dr. Bruce Lampinen processed, he came out with a couple of formulae or relationships, and one is almond yield is a function of canopy light interception. And further, the canopy light interception, as we all know, is a function of water applied. So he came up with this graph that I would like to show you. I think most of you have already seen this graph. So he plotted kernel pounds yield in almonds on this axis, y-axis, and on x-axis was a midday canopy light interception. So the slope is fairly equal, and from this we can extrapolate that about 80% of midday canopy light interception, we can expect about 4,000 pounds an acre yield. And if the canopy light interception is at 50%, and the yield will be fairly average at 2,500 pounds. So from these calculations, we have, you will have these slides in your handouts, that we developed a simple methodology that how can we know our PAR. By the way, PAR means photosynthetically active radiation, that part of the sunlight spectrum that is active and utilized for photosynthesis of the tree, by the tree. So if you take your previous 2 years average and divide it by 50, you get your photosynthetically active radiation. And then the amount of applied water is, if you divide your PAR by 1.42, you get the amount of applied water that you will need to get to that. So basically there is a relationship between the applied water and the photosynthetically active radiation and the yield, your expected yield. So now before I go to the evapotranspiration-based irrigation scheduling, I would like to talk about the irrigation strategies that we have been telling people. You can go two ways based on what amount of water allocation do you have. So if you have only up to 15% or 15-16% curtailment on your water, which means you still have 85% water available of what you had previous year or what you used to apply previous year, you can go for the regulated deficit irrigation strategies. Regulated deficit irrigation was a term developed in Australia a couple of decades ago, and they had experimented with peaches, apples, and pears over there. And in my opinion, regulated deficit irrigation is not just a tool to save water. In some fruit crops, it actually enhances the quality of the fruits, increases the dry matter accumulation and all that things. So regulated deficit irrigation means that you can withhold some water at certain developmental stages of the nut or fruit development and still have very little or no significant difference in the yield. As David explained, the fruit nut development curve in almonds, we call it a double sigmoid curve. After nut set, there's a period of active cell division and then a period of cell expansion and the nut expansion, size development, and up to this point. And from now on, there will be a period of nut fill, which we call the nut fill stage. So if we stress the trees early on after the fruit set, during the size development, if you stress the tree at that stage, you're going to have effect on the nut size, negative impact on the nut size. And then from now on until the end of nut fill stage, when the nut is filling, if you stress the trees at that time, you can have problems like nut shrivel. And then there is a window of time when the nut fill completes to the hull split. That window of time, the UC research shows that we can cut back irrigation up to 50% and still have not significant impact on the yields. So again, after hull split, during your harvest and until post-harvest, if you stress the trees for water during that time, you can have issues of the nut texture, issues in the nut texture. And then after the harvest, during the post-harvest, when there is the active time for the bud development for the next year, when you cut back on water at that time, you can have negative impact on next year's bloom and yield. So there is a little window of time before the hull split. So that can be only possible if you have very little water shortage, and you can apply normal amount of water at the other times, but at that time you can cut back water. Overall, it has been shown to save about 13% of water total. So the other strategy be if you have more curtailment of water, say if you had only 50% of water available than previous years, then there are several studies, and one of the studies that we always refer to, there was a study deploying three types of irrigation percentage of ET, and then three different stages that the deficit irrigation was applied to. And one of the treatments was that a certain percentage was set of ET. For example, if you just have 50% water available, you apply 50% water of every previous application you applied previous years based on your ET. If you used to apply 100% ET, water based on 100% of evapotranspiration, you apply just 50% evenly throughout the season. And that treatment had the least difference in terms of yield, and the trees yielded the most in that treatment. So the point here is, if you apply water at every irrigation at a certain set percentage of your calculations based on your evapotranspiration, then you will be better off rather than trying to stress the trees at one point and not stress the trees at the other point. Another thing that Dave also mentioned is, in that strategy, what we do is if we have limited water and we see that we are going to have that amount of water only throughout the season, what we're going to do is we're going to set a threshold level for the tree. I'm talking in teleological terms, that the trees actually adjust themselves to the available water. If we apply a good amount of water during spring and then cut back on water in the later days, then it's hard for the tree to adjust mid-season. But if you set a level that, okay, the tree is going to get this amount of water, so it's a biological thing. The tree's responses are, they are living things. So they adjust to these and they increase the water use efficiency. That means the more crop per drop. So they increase the photostimulate production per unit water used. So these are the strategies that you could employ. And then the next thing that I would like to move on to is the evapotranspiration-based irrigation scheduling. A lot of farmers have called me to discuss how to calculate trees' water needs, and I think most of you are informed growers. We can get the evapotranspiration data from our nearest CIMIS station. I have this little formula that I usually explain. Basically, this is the formula that we use for calculating water needs. ETC is evapotranspiration for your crop. ETO is a reference evapotranspiration from a grass-based ecosystem. And then KC is the crop coefficient. So in this case, we will use the crop coefficient for almonds. So if you multiply ETO, the reference evapotranspiration, by the crop coefficient, you get the evapotranspiration for your crop at that particular time. So basically, you can get weekly data from CIMIS station about the reference evapotranspiration, the ETO. You can multiply by crop coefficient for almond at that given time of the year, and then you can make a spreadsheet and calculate how much water in inches, how much water your trees are using. And now you have all the other figures like your tree density, your tree spacing, and then if you are of your micro irrigation system, you have your number of meters per acre. So you can calculate actually how many gallons per tree is needed at any particular time of the year. So basically, you will come up with 100% evapotranspiration needs of the tree. then you can decide if you are going to apply 85% of that ET or 50% of that ET or 70% of that ET. And then there are some other things to consider in terms of irrigation. That is the irrigation efficiency and irrigation uniformity of your system. I would encourage you to tune up your irrigation systems to improve your irrigation uniformity as well as your irrigation efficiency. And they have there are websites from UC Davis. I can give you those website addresses to go on. I think I have included that website to how to check your irrigation system to improve your distribution uniformity. And the last thing that I would like to talk about is monitoring your trees' water status. So I like to encourage growers to use pressure bomb as a tool to see the water status of your trees, because our evapotranspiration-based irrigation scheduling will tell us how much water our trees are using or how much water I need to apply to the trees at any time. But to know when to irrigate, when to start your irrigation, you need to go to the trees and measure their water status. And a pressure bomb is one of the best tools that we have available for that. With using the pressure bomb, you measure the midday stem water potential, and that gives you the readings in negative bars. So you get a baseline for water status, and basically you allow the trees to go about -2 to -4 bars below the baseline, and that's when you start your irrigation. Depending on how much water you have available, you can go below to 6 bars below the baseline, and then decide when to irrigate. So the idea is to develop the trees to have the trees develop some drought resistance mechanisms itself. So I have given the interpreting the readings slide in your handout, and I have given the pressure bomb picture. And if you're not familiar with the pressure bomb, you can call me, and I can tell you how to get the readings. And the last thing is the take-home message that in a severe drought situation where we have very limited water available, we are going to see some impacts on yield, not only this year, but even for the next year, because if we don't have much water to apply during the post-harvest stage when the bud development occurs. And so we're going to have an impact next year too. But that's how it is in a situation like this. And the last thing I would like to say is pray to God and never lose hope. Thank you.
People have questions?
Yeah, I had a question. The so-called, I guess they call water magnification. There's a lot of products out there now where you can put stuff on your outgoing line, or you put it down the well or whatever, and it's supposed to readjust the molecules of the water. Has there been any real research been done on that, or is that just a bunch of sales representatives trying to sell them stuff?
I'm not aware of any researchers. Dave might be knowing better for that. I don't know.
There's been magnetic approaches,
Okay.
and some of the claims go to reduce scale and development in the line. Some of the claims go to the salinity, reduce impacts from salinity because you're using well water. There's a number of these claims. There are people, I'm thinking of people like Larry Williams, Dave Goldhammer, over the years that have done a lot of, not a lot, but some testing of these. And to my knowledge, there's never been a true benefit shown by any of the products, anything, that's demonstrated for sure that there's any kind of a benefit. So I can't say that for sure that there's no impact, or it wouldn't have a, it's something we don't understand. There's not a scientific explanation that we can look to. So the products are out there. There's a lot of discussion about how they might work theoretically, but there's very little science that actually explains how or why they might work, and more importantly, that they do work.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see, some because most of these products are really expensive. I'd like to see some independent research done, not by the manufacturer, but by Department of Agriculture, whatever, do some kind of a study, because otherwise we could be out there spending a lot of money and we're buying pipe dreams because we think it works.
And the problem there is that the manufacturers don't put out a lot of money to independent researchers to do that work.
Of course not.
So that's what if you have a salesman come by, let him try to ask them where that research is coming from, who's doing it, was it replicated, is it a scientifically based experiment?
There's Decagon makes an instrument called a chlorometer, and that measures the vapor pressure above the leaf. Are you familiar with that instrument?
No, I've not used that.
The crop coefficient, that's based on a 10-year-old tree or something, or a 9-year-old tree, like a fully established tree?
Yeah, they're for mature trees.
So if you have like a 2-year-old tree, you have to make an adjustment to that crop coefficient?
Yeah, basically, based on these calculations, for 1 to 2 year old trees, we have it like 40% of what we get for the mature trees. And then 3 to 4 years is 55%, and 4 years plus 75%.
So you take a percentage of the crop coefficient
Right.
and use that as the new crop coefficient?
Right, so basically you would, based on my earlier explanation about the canopy coverage and the light interception, that comes out to be about the same canopy coverage based on the mature versus.
All right.
I've got a question to read. On some of these water deficit trials in almonds, as you get to a pretty significant deficit, is there any benefit to changing the frequency of irrigation? Is there any work on that?
I'm aware of one experiment that Blake Stanton is doing down in Kern County, and they are doing the pulsing, and he recently sent us an email about the encouraging data that he's getting about the pulse irrigating. So,
More frequent pulses
Yeah.
as opposed to
right.
spreading it apart. I mean, instead of weekly irrigation,
Yeah.
daily short pulses.
Yeah, but I'll have to look at more into that data. And he said this is the first data set that he's looking, and he's positive that we'll come up with something. Great. Thank you.